get the privilege of talking after lunch, but hopefully this stuff will be interesting enough and useful enough that it'll keep you awake. Organization is important. Your most valuable resource, especially during build season, is your time. When you waste time searching for things, that's oftentimes the most valuable time that you have lost, especially in your pit, and especially during elimination matches, as we have found out several times. Being able to find tools and parts in the pit instantly can make the difference between winning and forfeiting matches. When at Virginia in 2011, we had our elevator go down and we needed a particular nut. And I knew that we had it in the pit. It turned out that the bin that it was in was mislabeled. So we ended up spending 10 minutes looking for a lock nut that was right there. But because the bin didn't have the right label on it, you'd look at the bin and move to the next one. And finally, we opened it up and found it, and just barely got it onto the robot in time to be able to go out there, and we ended up doing pretty well. But if we hadn't found that thing, we would have been dead. In this year at North Carolina, we ended up on the bridge, flipped over and landed on our shooter wheel and bent the shaft. Because we had instituted most of the things that you're going to see, we were able to swap out that bent shaft, disassemble everything, swap it out, put it back together again in time that there were people that were coming up to us saying that we can't believe that you were able to get your stuff back together again to play the next morning. But we were able to do it because we were pretty well organized. One thing that you can point out to your students is being organized is professional. You don't see, or you don't want to see, your surgeon come to you with a tray full of tools that are all jumbled up and messed up. They're all nice and neat and lined up so that they can use them. And when things are neat and organized, it enables you to be successful. When you're not organized, it's not professional, and it hinders you from being successful. If you're searching for your tools all the time, if you're searching for your parts, if you can't find stuff, it slows you down and it wastes your time. And especially in a group environment where you've got 20 kids all trying to work and find tools and share tools, if one person picks them up and doesn't put it back in the right place, you lose time and it just bleeds away. One thing which we try to do is you train the way that you fight. When you're in your pit, you have to be organized, you have to work together, you keep things neat. The way that you work in your pit, work that way in your shop. Get those practices established and second nature to everyone ahead of time, so that when you go from your shop to your pit, everyone knows that these are the standards that you work to. So, organization comes down to infrastructure, and I'm going to show you our toolbox, our parts box, rack, our shelving that we keep all of our parts in, our battery charging station, and the fingerprint reader that we use to clock in and out. It also comes down to best practices, where we have a cleanup chores list, and we do accurate timekeeping when we can. So, most everybody, hopefully, has all their tools in a toolbox. What we try to do.
First time this year.
Yeah. Well, what we try to do is label everything, and that's sometimes non-obvious. If me, at home, in my shop, I know where all my tools are at. I know which drawers everything's in. When I will look for something, I just go to it and pull it out. But when you've got a whole bunch of people working and sharing a toolbox, the tendency is you've got something, you open it up, you toss it in, and you walk away. And you end up with your stuff just completely jumbled up. This lets people know where to put stuff, and it lets people know where to get it from. Our toolbox has wheels. We can get it in and out of our pit easy. We can move it around the shop if we needed to, but usually it lives right on this one wall. It locks so that when we steal stuff, that's usually not a problem, but our toolbox is in an area where people can walk through, and we have had stuff disappear from the shop. So when you're buying a toolbox, you usually want to get
Yeah,
one box.
my anyway, still my stuff, but I lost a computer one year.
Yeah.
The first real Black's computer, I lost it.
Right.
Just,
Wow.
I took it home and then I never found it.
One thing I try to get people to do, and it doesn't always work, but when they do this, it works well, is when you pick up a tool and you use it, you don't just lay it down, especially if you've got 2 or 3 groups working all over. Go to the toolbox, get it, use it, take it back to the toolbox and put it back, so that another group that needs that tool knows where to find that tool. They don't have to go searching all over looking for it. This is our parts rack.
That is nice. Is that yours, actually? Is that your?
What's that?
Is that pictures of your actual work stuff?
Yes. Yeah. We put this
We
together.
went to Sears and we took a lot of.
That is nice.
We put that together, I think, right before the championship last year, because we were going to have to go
2 years ago.
two years ago.
2011.
Right. We were going to have to go to St. Louis, and we were really unhappy with the way that things were set up. So we went out and bought all these bins and put all of our parts, transferred them to where we were doing them, into labeled, individually labeled compartments, labeled the front of the bin, and then on the rail, you match up your labels.
Wow. That's like a summer project.
Yeah, it's one of those training projects.
Yeah. It is.
I do it right now.
Right.
Yeah.
So, one of our quote unquote rules, which doesn't always get followed, is you don't leave parts laying around at the end of the day. When you are done working on something, if you have a little pile of parts, you pick them up and you put them back in the bins. We know where it all goes. It only takes 5 minutes. Take care of it. Don't leave stuff laying around. And this year, we organized our storage room by trying to do the same kind of thing. We've got a set of industrial shelves. Matt went out and bought a whole bunch of these clear boxes, and we went in and went into the chaos that was our storage room and sorted everything into all of these bins. And already that's paying off, where the kids, when they need something, they know where to get it, and even more importantly, when they're done with something, they know where to put it away. You don't just toss it in the room. You put it in the bin that it belongs in. Even if you took it out to do a task and you need it the next meeting, you don't leave it laying at your station or wherever. You put it back, and then you get it back out again.
How often does that happen?
It depends on.
Well, we're with high school students, right?
It depends on how well you enforce it, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But once you do enforce it, it's like a toddler. You know, once you teach them that this is the way it's done, they don't get away with it. You enforce that, you have to do it this way, and then once they learn that that's how it's done, then it becomes easy from then on. There are periods of backsliding,
Yeah.
but
We
hopefully.
instituted a general rule where nobody leaves until the shop is clean, which sometimes parents get mad.
Yeah.
But we explain to the parents ahead of time, look, we're done at 9 o'clock, but it could be 9:05 or 9:10 before your student comes out, because we've got this rule. And if you explain it to them, they tend to be a little bit more forgiving, as long as it doesn't happen every time.
See, I just let my parents come in and watch the kids work.
Well, a lot
Well,
of
they
times
can do
parents
that
will
too.
come in, and we invite them in, and they can see that their students are busy cleaning up.
This was our off-season, our fall project, to make a battery charging station, to organize our battery charging operations. What we have had in the past in our shop was a workbench that could have been being used as a workbench, but what it was being used for was, there was a whole bunch of batteries and a whole bunch of chargers and a big spaghetti of wires. What we wanted to try to do is organize that in a way that we could then, it would be organized in the shop, but especially we can now take this to our pit, and this will go on casters, a platform with casters on it. It will probably hold up or tuck in underneath one end of our table in the pit, or we'll end up making some sort of workbench and it'll support one side of it. So now we've got a very space efficient way to hold 6 batteries, which should be enough for a competition if you're managing them right. And then we got a couple of these 3 battery chargers that So we don't need 6 chargers now, we only need the 2.
Right, those are available from Andy Mark. They're expensive as all get out. They're like $200 a piece. But we decided, ultimately it was worth it because we kept replacing the ones that come in the kit of parts. We kept having to replace those like once a year. They're only like $30 a piece, but you're only charging 1 battery. So
if you Google around, you might be able to cut $40 off of them. I've seen them for.
have you seen them cheaper?
Yeah.
I did try it.
Amazon.
They're on Amazon for like $165.
Oh, that's
Really? Okay, I looked around before we bought them from Andy Mark, and I couldn't find them cheaper elsewhere. So that's good
Yeah,
information.
they're out more and more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just
And
get the
you
number
charge
from
how
Andy
many
Mark and
batteries
then
now?
get the
Three-
model number from Andy Mark.
There's
and
3
search them
unit.
around.
Right.
So each shelf has 3 batteries
Right,
and
so
1 charger.
1, 2, 3. We're strapped in here so that we can take this unit, put it in the back of a truck, and it gets all shaken around and all the batteries will stay secure. The battery spill kit is going to go on the top shelf. When we modeled it, I put in a few 2 batteries. Too many batteries.
You thought we had $600 worth of charge.
So, we'll put a battery spill kit on the top shelf, which is better anyway. We could also put chargers up there for our cameras and computer and all that kind of thing too.
Yeah.
Okay, this is what Matt was just working up, or what we're talking about. At the last beginning of last season, we talked about this whole problem of people just leaving the shop a mess, and usually the mentors end up having to stay and clean it all up, and we weren't going to do that. So we sat down and made a list of all of the chores that need to be done. Got lots and lots of kids. If you break these chores up into small enough tasks, it only takes a couple of minutes to do them, 2, 3, 5 minutes. And you make a list. This is the primary person that is responsible for that chore. If they happen to not be there, then they have a secondary chore to do. And until the list is done, nobody leaves. That helps people work together to get everything done so that they can all leave. You post the list prominently right here. It's right by our door to come into the shop. You let the kids choose what tasks they want to do. And then at 10 to 9, most of our work sessions during the week are from 6 to 9. 10 to 9, we say, okay, everybody stop what you're doing, put everything away, clean up, then you can go. And 10 minutes should be enough. As long as everybody's here, we can get all that stuff done and out the door, and everything is clean so that the mentors can get home in a reasonable hour too. And then again, before anybody leaves, a mentor walks over to that list and calls out the tasks. Is this done? If it's done, okay, now move down to the next one. When you get down to the thing, or the bottom of the task, and it's all done, then everybody can go. And then the other thing is what you'll find is the list that we came up with at first, they weren't broken up quite right. You could group, some of the tasks were really easy or didn't need to be done all the time. So we group them together into a group. You can revise this so that everybody is actually working the whole time instead of somebody getting a really easy thing to do and then somebody else having to work the whole time. And then timekeeping. What you find out is that on a team, a robotics team, just like any organization, you end up with some of the kids that are there all the time and work the hardest, and then you have some that just kind of come and want to hang out. If you track the time that people come, you can identify who your key kids are, and then when it comes time to decide who's going to go to competitions, if there are limited spaces available, or if you have you need to decide who's going to be working in your pit or who's going to be on your drive team, you can tie directly people that get those high, cool positions are the people who work the hardest. So when people say, well, how come I don't get to be on a drive team? Well, that kid was here all the time and they were willing to work. And you were like, if you were willing to do that too, then you could do these cool things. Another thing that they're used for is publicity and fundraising and end-of-year awards. Because we actually do.
Yeah, last year was the first year we had, because of the fingerprint scanner, and the way that works is everybody sticks their finger on it, it scans them, logs them in, logs them back out. If they forget to log out, it's like they weren't there at all that day. so it resets at midnight. But at the end of the year, we went through it and we totaled up all the hours that we put into our robot last year. It was 4,500 hours that the team put in our robot this past year. And that was the first time we really had a good handle. We'd always had paper timesheets, but the students would kind of fill them out and the mentors usually wouldn't. But this thing, pretty much everybody uses. It's not been a problem. And it really allows us to zero in on exactly how much time we're spending on things. The fingerprint readers are available for about $95 and the software is free. We'd be, if somebody wanted to use it, we'd give you the software. We wrote software, and it's just a matter of registering people. You have to scan your finger 4 times or something to make a scan metric, and then it just works automatically.
So, when you get to competition, you set up your pit, and we have tried to organize our pit, and it's a gradual process, of course. But the goal is that you can do any repair in as short a time as possible. And you can see, like I said, a lot of the elements that you saw in the shop pictures, the toolbox, the parts rack, show up in the pit, because if they work in the pit, they work in the shop. Usually if they work in the shop, they work in the pit too.
Is that a battery on the side of your parts rack?
Yeah.
On the side of the parts rack, when we originally designed it, it was a parts rack, and we had these little shelves that are sticking off. Each one of those shelves had a battery. On the back of the parts rack, we had all of our chargers. So we put all the batteries on there and then ran cords around, so it acted as both. And it worked great, but some of on this particular, this was North Carolina, some of the safety people that were coming by were saying that they didn't like the fact that those batteries were sitting up on a high shelf without being supported because they could fall off. So
bracket and strap.
yeah, we could have strapped them or put things around, but these shelves you had to transport this, you had to slide them all down to the bottom and then put them all back again. It ended up sucking up time. So we decided to make the battery charger station and get them off that rack. And then I'm going to go through each one of the things that you see here. So we call this thing our Workbench Topper. This is made out of scrap 80/20 because you do end up with a lot of it. We've got shelves on each side where we can put cordless tools, cleaning alcohol, the computer. I think this is a box of balls. You've got a whiteboard in the back that ended up being that has turned out to be really nice because you can write stuff on here, and it's a real good way to communicate between people that are coming in and out. It's got a light across the top so that when we need to work on something, you can see real well. This black thing that goes across here is a big power strip, shelving, and then on top we can put signs, and then a backboard for our vision. This whole thing is light enough. You take the shelves off, and then this whole thing, you can two students you grab each side and you can carry it with one hand.
How big of a vehicle are you transporting all this stuff to competition?
Well, for competitions,
I have one Ford Ranger.
What we've been doing this time, or what we've been doing lately, has been renting a travel trailer.
But that includes carrying the robot.
Yeah.
Right. We rented a large U-Haul trailer this last year for both competitions.
Yeah.
Pick it up in the garage.
Stuff that we needed in the pits that we didn't have at the time, but now we always will. A nice Vise. The times that we have tried to work on something and not had any way to do it, and then you end up with two kids standing like this, and you put it on their legs and you try to solve it.
Yeah. Know that one.
Seen that one done, yeah.
We've got a Vise now. It's on a board with a handle. You pick it up, you carry it in. You can set it down, you clamp it onto the edge of the table. The last time around, it worked great. When we were in North Carolina, there was a team there that had a little bandsaw.
I've seen that in Richmond.
There were other teams standing in line.
Yeah, we need
so I think it was the end of last fall or something. I found this thing at a flea market for $40 or something. So now we'll always have it. We can take that to competitions. I also happen to have a little benchtop lathe. I didn't take a picture of it, but we've taken that to competitions too. It'll fit on one of those shelves on the side of the benchtop. Pit practices. One thing that we do is we make badges for everybody. Professional. Puts their name on there so that when people come up and talk to them, you can tell who they are. And it makes I started doing it because being on the pit crew, it made it something not that you had to do. It was cool because you got a badge. Now everybody else wants one too, so we've started giving them to the drive team and the multimedia team and anybody else who does anything there. Again, that goes back to, it gives people motivation to want to do the cool things so that they want to work, and then you end up with better results from the whole team that way. Checklists. This has bit us when we don't have them. And I think this is going to be one of those really ingrained practices. They're using the professional world for a reason, because when you get under pressure, you think that you remember all the things that you need to do, but sometimes you don't. But in the world of robotics, when you don't, you lose matches. So we have a functional checkout between matches, a list of all the things that need to be checked by the pit crew. We usually write that on the whiteboard. We learned once again at Robot Rumble, we need to have a checklist for the drive team when they're setting up the robot on the field, because sometimes they forget to do stuff that they most of the time remember to, but when they don't, it bites you. And then we've also got a list of all of the things that we put on the robot cart for eliminations. Because again, when it comes time to get everything onto your cart so you can do repairs on the field, you think you remember, you know all that stuff, but when you've got, the hour break over lunch to get everything ready to go, you forget stuff.
What's hour break? We've never had a full hour.
Spare parts are critically important. In our past 5 competitions, and I wasn't including just the Robot Rumble this time, but in our previous 4 regionals and the one time that we've gone to championship, we had problems where we had parts that failed, and if we hadn't had the spares there, we would have been out. If you can, try to bring spares of every actuator, every sensor, and your motors. At a minimum. Chains. You probably don't need to bring spares for every single thing. There are things that have a fairly low probability of failure, but your high probability failure things, and especially if they're critical to your operations, you want to bring spares if you can. Usually what we do is in the pit underneath our table, we bring an electrical crate and a mechanical crate. So we put all our electrical spares in one and our mechanical spares in the other one, and that keeps them neat and tidy, and you know where to find them when you need them. But again, you do need to be able to find them when you need them. If they're just tossed in there and you can't find the crate or you can't find them in a pile of stuff, you might as well not have them. We have worked a lot on the makeup of our pit team. We've gone through iterations, and I don't know if we've ever had the exact same makeup twice in a row, but I think we finally hit on one that really works well. In the pit, we have a student lead for software, student lead for electrical, and a student lead for mechanical. One of those is overall pit lead. They're in charge of coordinating everything, making sure that everybody's there. Their job is to keep the robot running. The other part of their job is if they need help, they call in other students and mentors for help. If you're not one of those people, you shouldn't be in the pit. To make sure that that happens, we have gone to having ambassadors at our pit. We have a lead and an assistant. The lead pretty much stays there most of the day. The assistants we rotate in so that everybody who wants to be involved with the pit can be. They can be an assistant ambassador, and these people are available to help out these guys when they need a hand. Their job is to interface with all of the people that come to the pit and ask questions. They keep people that aren't supposed to be in the pit out. And what we have found is that if we had the right people in the pit to do the work and didn't have ambassadors to protect those people from people who are coming and asking questions, they were not able to get things done the way they needed to. Yeah. So really realized that having our ambassadors there is one of the most important positions in the pit crew and possibly even the team.
How many people do you bring with you to a competition, to a regional?
So far, we have been able to bring everybody that we wanted to. And
Yeah.
that's, what,
Probably 25.
25, okay.
Last year we were about 30 students, so I think we took 25 or 26 to both competitions.
Now,
yeah.
just last year, we had 41 kids that we took, and we probably could have took a few more if they could have come up with cash.
Yeah.
Do they get a pay?
If they can hard.
It was $250 a kid last year.
Another thing that we have learned the hard way sometimes is make sure that your pit crew eats in shifts. The temptation is lunch, everybody go eat, and then you end up with stuff that doesn't get done over lunch. So we really try to trade off. The other thing that has really helped us this past year is our parents have supplied us with lunches instead of us having to go out and walk down the street to a restaurant and get lunch. And that has been a huge help because all you got to do is come right out the door, you eat, you can come right back in again. It doesn't take forever. We can't say enough about how wonderful that's been. So, in summary, organization enables you to be successful. You want to have a place for everything, and you want to make sure everything gets put back in its place. An easy way to do that is to use lots of labels so that everybody knows where to put stuff. Try to make your shop practices just as neat and organized as you need to do in your pit. Shop organization projects are great for training. It's great to be able to have all of that bench top topper, the rack, the battery charger things have all been training exercises. So everybody gets trained, and you also get great stuff for your pit too. And then also learn from your mistakes and try to continuously improve. And that's one of the hardest things is, you get done with your last competition and things went wrong, and if you don't write that stuff down and remember it and fix it, it just gets lost. So that's an important step that you always want to try to do. Any questions?